Okay, so this question says, so the footnote says $17 trillion was the U.S. national debt. And so that's why I pulled that number out of the air. It says integrate, do not try to evaluate the final answer. And remember, this particular year, the students did not have access to any calculators. And so it was a calculator-free question. So it says just integrate. Do not try to evaluate the final answer, but do try to figure out if it's large or small. In other words, I wanted some kind of ballpark answer, and the results to this question made me very, very sad. So I'll just say that much. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to write 17t for 17 trillion. Alright, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and do the integral, increase by 1, divide by the new exponent. Alright, now what does that mean? Well, this is a negative, and it's 0.1. So what's the reciprocal of 0.1? It's 10. So it's negative 10. And what's x to the negative 0.1? Well, 0.1 is the 10th root, and negative means on the bottom. And it's from 17 trillion to 1. And if we just flip the limits of integration, why did I put that there? Sorry. I meant to put an x here. Then we can, if we flip the limits of integration, we can get rid of the negative sign. Now, when we flip the one, when we put x equals 1 in, we get 10. And then we have 17 trillion, but we want the 10th root of 17 trillion. Ah, this is the button I meant. 17t. Okay, it's just kind of hard to read that 17t. Let me try to fix that again. 17t. Okay, so if you have a calculator, which now you might, okay, so 17 trillion. So you're working on the practice exam, you have 17 trillion, 17,000, million, billion, trillion to the power of 0.1. It is going to be about 21. So what it's telling you is this fraction is about a half. So 10 minus a half is going to be like 9.5. So since you have a calculator, I would expect you would have a better approximation. But what would you do if you didn't have a calculator? What you would do is you would say, well, okay, 17, I don't know how many zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 3 zeros. And since I don't have a 10th root, I can just take the square root 3 times. And that gives me the 8th root, which isn't perfect. It'll give me a number that's too big. But you know what? I don't really like 17 trillion. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually make it 16 trillion because I can actually get a better handle on that number. And so I'm making an adjustment. I'm making the argument too big, and then I'm making the function is going to end up being in the wrong direction. But I'm just looking for a ballpark. I just want to know a rough ballpark. So if I take the square root of 16 trillion, the square root of 16 is 4, and then I'm going to end up with 6 zeros, right? So this is just basically a zero counting exercise. And then that's going to be like the square root of 2,000. And what's the square root of 2,000? I don't know. See, square root of 2 is like 1.4, and the square root of 1,000, what's 1.5 zeros? I don't know. What is the square root of 2,000? Beats me. So it's like 1.4 times, well, it's between 10 and 100, right? So it's like something like 14 to 140, something like that. So what I'm asking the students to do is make a really rough estimate. So this thing is probably between, 10 and 200. And if the student said that, I would be thrilled. That would be totally fine by me. And that's what I want. I want just a completely rough ballpark. And the important thing to note is that 10 over 10 would be 1, and so you get an answer of 9. But 10 over 200 would be significantly smaller. So your final answer, you're going to say final answer between 9 and 10. Okay, and if the student was able to say the final answer is somewhere between 9 and 10, I will be totally thrilled beyond belief. But I don't know if anybody that year did so well. I don't remember. I mean, maybe a couple people did, but it was certainly not something a lot of people did. So I was sad about that. Okay, moving right along. Okay, so for what values does P converge? Well, this was just a recollection of 1 over x, so P is equal to 1, would diverge, and we know that because it's like the harmonic series. Alright, but if P greater than 1, then we have convergence. And what's the least amount a student could say and get full credit? All they had to say is P greater than 1, and they would get half of the points for that question. Okay, but I want to write more so that you have more to study. So you can think about this, think about why it's true,